doubts in that area. Because Jesus did lots of signs. But when people came up to him and said, hey, show us a sign and we'll believe. Then Jesus said, this evil and adulterous generation should not be given a sign. But why would he say something like that when signs were part of the ministry? When miracles were part of the ministry? Well, it gives it away. In most places it says they came to him tempting him. The devil came to Jesus tempting him. Hey, if you're the Son of God, do a show. Perform a miracle. Do a sign if you're the Son of God. But Jesus said, no sign shall be given except the sign of Jonah the prophet. And that was the sign of the resurrection. Right? That was the sign that they all would see. And I just want to read a couple things in Mark chapter 6. It's all going to be in Mark chapter 6. And then we want to just spend some time praying. Chapter 6, verse 1. And he went out from there and came into his own country, and his disciples followed him. And when the Sabbath day was come, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many hearing him were astonished, saying, From where has this man these things? And what wisdom is this which is given unto him, that even such mighty works are wrought by his hands? So here's Jesus going out and he's teaching. And then he's healing. It sounds like the principle of the Lord confirming the word with signs following. One time, and I believe this is Mark 6, Jesus, he looked out and he saw the multitudes, and they were like sheep, not without a shepherd. And it says, and Jesus was moved with compassion on them. And you know what he began to do? Does anybody know that? What did Jesus begin to do?
Teach.
He began to teach. That's right.
Verse 34.
Verse 34. Is that the chapter I'm in?
That's right.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Good. That's convenient. Praise God. He says, the sheep not having shepherd began to teach them many things. One of the things that as we move on with God, we need to be taught. We need to be taught. You have different ways of different people classify their Christian experience. Some people just like to go and just hoop and holler all service long. The joy of the Lord, that's all they want to see. I don't want to learn anything. I like this, And that's great. There's times for that, isn't there? We've had the last 2 Wednesdays, there hasn't been any formal preaching. There's been praying for people. There's been worshiping the Lord. Those are beautiful times. We never get away from that. Cut out there for a second. The power lost. And we never want to lose that. Those times with Jesus. Those times of just abiding with him and enjoying him and the joy that comes of being in the presence of the Lord. But there are times to be taught. There are times that he says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So there is a perishing that you can experience from lack of knowledge. And I want to use what Billy said about early in his life. He didn't eat right. He didn't do some things right. Well, there's some good old practical things that if we don't do, we're going to suffer. Right? I thank God for healing, for divine healing. And, I'm talking about colds, everything. I bring it to the Lord. I say, Lord, I just want to thank you for your touch in my life. Thank you for healing that's in the new covenant. These are great. But you know what? We also live in a world where there's sicknesses. There's diseases. It's a world that is totally corrupt and ruined. In Romans 8, Paul talks about even the very creation groans to be clothed upon, for the sons of God to be manifest. Even the creation is suffering. It doesn't want this. What sin has brought. earthquakes and all these catastrophes that are all over the world. It's like birth pangs that the world is doing. But to be taught, hey, you really shouldn't eat Twinkies at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't sound like a lot of spiritual teaching, but it's some good teaching. It's not good to eat Twinkies at 11 o'clock at night. I like Twinkies. I don't eat them anymore, but I'm getting older. I realize that, hey, I can't just shove whatever I want to in my mouth. I can't go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, get back up at 6 and be like a full night's sleep rested. We do need to take care of ourselves, right? There are some basic, fundamental things that, hey, if you sit in front of the TV all day and eat chips and drink Coke, it's not going to pan out too good. Right? And then you're forced to call upon God for divine healing. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to be part of the problem. So but Jesus began to teach in the synagogue. So he taught them how to follow the Lord. He taught them the ways of God. And then, but look at verse 3. Is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph, and of Judah and Simon? Are not his sisters here with us? And they were offended at him. You know, if you're offended at Jesus in any area, you're not going to see him move in that area in your life. You know, in John chapter 6, when Jesus was speaking to the disciples, he talked about unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. It says, some of the disciples said, Lord, this is a hard saying. Who can hear it? And it says, and they were offended. And you know what happens when you get offended? It says, and they walked with him no more. They walked with him no more. They deserted the Lord. And they become among the ranks of people who say, well, I used to go to church, but, you know, the pastor said something, and I got offended. Well, yeah. Pastors are human beings. All ministers are human beings. You've got to look beyond the offenses that people will give you and say, God, Jesus, I'm not going to quit following you. I'm going to hold on to you. And I'm not going to let what other people do or say get me off of finishing my course with joy. Right? Because all of it is distraction. It's all meant to get your eyes off the prize. And when you get your eyes off the prize, you're not walking with God anymore. You start moving. You start going into sin, the deceitfulness of sin. Your heart begins to get hard. And then you fall among the ranks of them and say, well, I know God, but He's not interested in me. You know, it's a bunch of hype. You know, the skeptic, they become Christian atheists. You know? They claim to be Christians, but you look at their life and they deny the existence of God with their life. They're Christian atheists. And but here they were offended, and Jesus said a prophet is not without honor, but in his own country and among his own people, in his own house. And he could do there no mighty work, save that he laid his hands upon a few sick folk and healed them. A few. He wanted to do a lot. He wanted to heal them all. Many times Jesus went into a village, and it says they all came to him, and they were all healed. I mean, they were all who had infirmities were healed. But here's an offense. Here's isn't this the carpenter's son? And what they begin to do, they begin to doubt. They begin to doubt. And but it says he could do no mighty work there. Well, could Jesus override their lack of faith and do a mighty work there? Yeah, he could. Hasn't the Lord done that with you? You've been just totally faithless and Jesus met you? Have you been like a Thomas where you're saying, even though you had spent 3 years with the Lord, saw the miracles that he had done, saw him raise people from the dead, and he says, I'm going to go into the grave and I'm going to be raised again. And yet he's there and Jesus wasn't. That was planned.